I feel like I remember everything. Like I remember so much.
Yeah.
And I have smoked so much weed that I should be the one that doesn't remember anything.
It's crazy.
And I remember everything, you guys.
It does not make sense.
People who can self-reflect, that's a fucking skill. No, you guys, you can't make this shit up.
It was not a good time the next day or for the next few days. Oh my gosh.
Welcome back to another episode of Sessions for the Soul.
Yeah, welcome back. How's your week been?
I'm just like living for this sunshine.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I honestly, like the other day I was catching up with someone and they were like, "Oh, what'd you do today?" And I was like, "Yeah, I just literally laid on the ground outside in the sun all day, like for hours." And they were like, "Oh, that's all you did?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's all I did." And honestly, productive in my mind. Yeah.
So good. I love the weather we've been having. We did a couple episodes ago, I mentioned I was like, oh, I'm just craving like a fire on the beach and blah, blah. And then I did have a fire on the beach with my family and it was so fun and the weather was perfect.
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
It was so fun. Such a good time. And I feel like I hope that just like sets the tone for this summer and just like all the fun summer experiences.
I love summer. I used to not love summer. I love summer.
Really?
Yeah.
What about it?
Just like I liked winter better. I was like more of a winter. No, never. I think that's what happens when you age though. Like
I don't identify with that version of me anymore.
No, I literally don't.
Who is she?
Yeah, I'm like, you want to do what? You want to sit inside for 2 months? Like, I don't know. When I was a kid, like and a teenager, I definitely kind of like the hibernation period, which I feel at times.
Yes.
Because that's like part of us and our like circadian rhythm and stuff. But no, I definitely love I love just like sunshine and light and like the burst of energy it gives you.
Yeah.
It is. I've been playing outside like for hours. The night that I have my niece and nephew, we were outside for 3 hours the other night playing like everything under the sun. We played Monkey in the Middle for hours. We just like we're playing all these crazy games. It keeps me young. I actually got my mom and her personal assistant work from my mom's house, and so when I am with the kids, we're like down at their little play fort at my mom's, and you know you can see it from the house, and they like sent me a video of me like running around doing karate, like playing. Aww. And they were like, "This is actually the sweetest thing ever. I like love that you're doing this with him." And I was like, you know, it keeps me young. And it also is like at the end of their lives, at the end of my life, all I want these kids to think is like, God, she was the coolest person.
Yeah.
And so I will do whatever to just ensure that they like always are like,
yeah.
We had the best time with her.
Yes.
And so even if it's against like sometimes I'm like, I just want to fucking do nothing or I just want to like be.
Yeah. I'm
like, no, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. So,
yeah. So much fun. I'm very excited for this summer.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing I'm not excited for is mosquitoes because they're already bad. Have you noticed?
Yeah. Wait, should we briefly tell the mosquito story? Because we
talked about it
a couple episodes ago.
We should tell it.
And now mosquitoes are coming up again.
No, literally. So we don't have an I said what I said this week, you guys. We're just going to dive in.
A mosquito story.
So we have a mosquito story instead. Hilarious. Yeah. I mean, so essentially like just some context. I was doing these like wander and weave walks, which was like intentional walks and journaling. And the first one we ever did was just, I'm so grateful that it was just you and my mom, because if we would have had people there, like, I don't know how this would have gone that were not like like close people to me. But yeah, so we went and did this hike at the end of this, like it's out kind of like by the bay, like a wetland for sure. The day before it had rained and
so much
like just wet. And then it was like super humid and muggy. And I'm not even joking. Within 3 minutes of beginning this walk, we are covered in mosquitoes.
Like hundreds of mosquitoes. But we were like, let's just keep going. Maybe it'll get better. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. Because the first part is in like kind of a wetland,
Yes.
Part of the trail, and then it gets foresty. It was still so bad in the forest.
It was bad everywhere. Like my mom was walking behind Kayla and I'm not joking, you guys. My mom was like, you guys, there are hundreds of mosquitoes on your legs. Like they were like lining our leggings. And when you're wearing leggings, you might as well just be naked, be in shorts. That's no problem.
We were not prepared for this. We had like, I think each of us counted like around 100 mosquito bites on us the next day.
Except for my mom,
who covered herself in berries.
No, you guys, you can't make this shit up. My mom is just like this otherworldly being. And we're on this walk and Kayla and I are like, okay, what are we going to do? We're just like swiping them off of our body as much as we can. Yeah. Honestly, it looked like probably hilarious. Anybody outside looking in was like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Because it was very much like, when people like in movies are like, there's bees like swarming us or something, like that's how we were. My mom is like, first of all, she is like, oh, I love these berries. She starts picking berries and eating them. I'm like, Mom, those are literally probably poisonous. What are you talking about? She's like, I grew up here.
Yeah.
They're not. And I'm like, okay. So over here, actually, I made some jokes. I was like, okay, fucking Lewis and Clark over here covering herself. And then at one point she's like, you know what? I think if we cover ourselves in berry juice, that will help. Mm-hmm. And so my mom is like crushing up berries, wiping it all over her face. She looked like she had war paint on.
Yeah, her arms, she was skin exposed.
And this woman walked away with like maybe 4 or 5 bites.
Yeah.
And we walked away with, I think I like kind of got sick from it.
It was not a good time the next day or for the next few days. Oh my gosh.
It was so itchy.
Yeah.
I'm itchy thinking about it.
To just like listen to your mom
I know.
Yeah, that's so funny. Oh my gosh, it was an experience.
And you know what? It's moments like that I think like I will carry who she is with me forever. But like also I can't help but be like, what the fuck? Yeah, hilarious.
Oh my gosh.
It made a great memory.
Yes.
And
we're all about making memories.
We are, especially with Hillary. Oh my gosh, you guys. But yeah, so basically we have mosquito trauma and I dread them. I fear them.
Yeah, no, it's not the most desirable part of the summer.
No, it's not. But it's okay. Mm-hmm. You know what? It's the trade-off we take for sun. Mm-hmm. So anyway, should we dive into today's episode?
Yeah, I'm excited. I feel like we have such a good lineup right now.
And I know.
This one's on emotional immaturity, which I think is just such a great topic to dive into because as we've talked about before, some like, phrases or words or diagnoses or whatever are just like thrown around and overused. And this might fall into that category, possibly. And so we just kind of want to dissect it a little bit more and dive into it on like what this actually means. We're going to talk about how to handle emotionally immature people and then also how to develop your own emotional maturity. If this is like, if as you listen and you're like, oh gosh, oh no, it's me, like I'm the problem. We're going to give you some tools.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited. I love this. We have like some like more textbook definitions and things like that. We're going to talk about like more technical things. But I think also like what will be fun to explore in this is kind of like maybe some like examples of like how this shows up in like real life. Because sometimes I think when we hear the textbook definition of something, we're like, but then when we hear it explained, we're like, oh, wait a second. Like I've been in situations like that or whatever. Mm-hmm. Just to help people like kind of understand how this shows up. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think this is a good one. And I'm excited to see where it goes.
Me too.
Yeah. So like just off the bat, we're going to dive into like what is emotional immaturity. Because I think like Kayla said, there's like so much of these like hot button words where like we think we understand them, but like, do we understand them? And how does this actually like show up and like, what does it pertain to in real life? So, like emotionally immature individuals often just like to struggle. What?
They enjoy struggling.
They enjoy. I'm just like, did that make any sense? They enjoy. Yeah, no, they struggle to regulate their emotions. They act impulsively, lack empathy, function with like basically a lower emotional intelligence than their age reflects. So if you think about a child growing up, right? Like children are actually supposed to be egocentric for a good part of their development because that's how we literally like learn to relate to the world. And it at a certain point is supposed to evolve beyond that. For emotionally immature individuals, it's sort of like arrested development. They just kind of stay on a certain like period or kind of a certain developmental phase. And this again is nuanced because like maybe they have emotional maturity in one area of their life where they can like handle conversations or difficult situations no problem, like at work or in certain relationships. But if something is more triggering or like it related to a trauma they had, that's where the emotional immaturity will show up. Yeah. So basically, yeah, that's the definition. You know, these people are often more self-centered, avoid accountability, use childlike and reactive behaviors. Yeah.
Something I was thinking about that we didn't note, and might be worth stating toward the beginning is a couple different things. One is like the cultural context of this. The stuff that we're going to be going through is very relevant to our cultural context. And so if you're listening maybe from like another part of the world, or you have like a significantly different cultural background, emotional maturity might look different within your cultural context, possibly. And then the other thing is like there are certain factors, like you mentioned trauma, and I was like, oh, for children, especially young children who are experiencing like really significant trauma, like I'm talking sexual abuse, physical abuse, things like that, or substantial neglect, they are going to have different development than someone who does not have that trauma, or possibly like some of the neurodivergent diagnoses and things like that. So like other factors that are contributing to emotional immaturity. So looking at it through the lens of like, this isn't necessarily like a choice that people are making a lot of times. It's like a reflection of the environment that they were raised in.
100%. I would actually like, just to amplify what you said, I would say that like it's most of the time it's not a choice, right?
Yeah.
I think contextually, like, and I feel like this is relative because like a lot of codependent or like enmeshed families like have emotional immaturity at the core of them, and it's not anyone's like fault. But the like caveat is like, okay, your trauma is not your fault, but it's your responsibility to like heal or do something different, like make a choice, right? So I totally agree. I think most of this is unconscious or stems from something like way deeper or farther back in the line than like what it shows up as in our current lives.
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure. I love that you said that. I think that's so important. But yeah, so yeah, these are people that essentially like, you know, have a hard time handling stress or stressful situations. And sometimes the way that shows up, right, is like shifting blame, having tantrums, like struggling in conversations. And we'll get into like some examples of like how emotional immaturity shows up. But yeah, to start, should we like just unpack the signs of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and you've mentioned some of these, like the guilt trips and the triangulation and things like that. I think too, and maybe this is where we can dive into some examples of like poor conflict resolution, inability to like take a no from someone, to hear no, or to experience rejection and handle it gracefully on any level, lack of responsibility or ownership over things that like your own behaviors or things that you're doing that maybe could use some adjustment or improvement.
Yeah.
Tearing others down. I think a lot of times that comes from like a deep sense of insecurity. And so you're trying to tear others down to, you know, get a false sense of building yourself up. So it's all these behaviors, like you mentioned at the beginning, that are kind of childlike. Like as children, it's very normal to have these behaviors, and you start to learn like, oh, okay, that's not the best way of dealing with this as your brain starts to develop over time. And you learn more effective ways at handling adversity in relationships. And when you're someone who isn't developing emotionally, like that emotional intelligence is lacking or isn't exactly where it maybe should be overall for like your age group that you're in, these things can start to really cause problems, I think, in relationships. And So I think maybe just some examples, if we can come up with any examples on the spot. I'm thinking of like if plans change, for example, if you're someone who's like, I like to be really rigid and I like to have structure and I don't have a lot of flexibility. And if you're in a situation where someone's like, oh, okay, but like our plans have changed because either like it's just not going to work the way we had it planned, or like, no, we have to change the plans like logistically. And you just have a complete meltdown over that, or you
Yeah.
shut down and you like stonewall the other person and you're not open to like having a conversation, or you start attacking the other person verbally. Those are all signs of like we gotta work on this. Like this is
Yeah.
emotional immature behavior.
Absolutely. I think that's a great example. It's so interesting because emotional immaturity can show up like in so many ways and in so many different like faucets of life. One example that's coming to mind right now is kind of like the inability to take any like feedback or like to handle, I guess, confrontation. So an example of this would be like, I'm going to use a parental or like child or like a close familial relationship example of if someone comes to you and says like, hey, when you said this, it really hurt my feelings. And your immediate response is, well, you do this, or, well, I'm sorry I'm sorry I'm such a bad person, or whatever. Like insert little clapback that is just like really irrelevant here. That's an example of emotional immaturity. Or maybe if you're a parent and your child comes to you and says, hey, I think I'm not going to go to college. And in your mind, you've like laid out their whole life for them and you have them on a fast track to like go to a 4-year university, get a degree, and then like go get this job. And that confronts the idea or the projection of who you've laid out for them to be.
Yeah.
Then what happens is you guilt them, maybe criticize them, tear them down, like shame them, et cetera, et cetera. That's emotional immaturity. And so those are two like really extreme examples. Like we've just given like 3 like pretty broad examples, totally different scenarios or things, but those are examples of kind of like what emotional immaturity looks like and feels like. Not to say that you're not allowed to have your own emotional experience. You can be disappointed if your child decides to take a different path. But it's how you show up, because emotional maturity would look like being like, okay, I hear what you're saying. I don't understand your decision, but I support you, or I'm here for you if you need anything.
Yeah.
And that's emotional maturity, is being able to say like, oh man, I don't get this and I don't agree with it necessarily, but I'm here for you. Because at the end of the day, right, like we want to be seen and accepted. And so we want to give that to others, right? It's about reciprocity to a degree. Or if someone's like sharing a criticism of us or like, hey, this really hurt my feelings, not to go on the defense or the attack or, go into those places that are like sticky, but to just say like, oh, I'm so sorry that that's how you experience that. You don't have to give an explanation. You don't have to have a defense argument. You don't have to, it's just as simple as, seriously, like it really is as simple as being like, I'm really sorry you experienced that way. And maybe you don't have a response right then or understanding, but what you can say is like, I hear what you said and I'm going to think about that. And I'd love to talk more in the future. Just right now, I'm just processing.
So good. I was thinking about how there's been seasons of my life, even just within the last like year or two, where I can say like, I have grown so much emotionally and like how I deal with certain things. And there are still times where if my capacity is reduced or I'm experiencing like stressors or other things that are coming up for me, where certain categories of some of these examples and signs that we've talked about will start to resurface, where it's like, ooh, I thought I worked through that, but it's like coming back to the surface. And specifically, being able to take criticism and feedback, like constructive criticism. And I think I've mentioned this maybe before, but just on the topic of emotional immaturity, there's been seasons within the last year where Adam has shared with me, like, hey, here's some constructive feedback on certain things, within my business or just different things that I was doing at the time. And for a while, I was like, why am I getting so defensive over this? Like, I can't hear it. I can't receive it. And I started noticing that within myself, which we'll talk about the awareness piece in a little bit. But at some point I told Adam, I was like, you know what? I'm noticing within myself, like I'm getting so defensive when you're offering me this feedback.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm in a season right now where I can hear that. And so, then we, worked on different ways to approach it and how to, get on a good page with,
Right.
giving and receiving feedback. And so I just want to share that to kind of normalize that maybe not all of these signs align with where you're at, or maybe you feel like I've worked through so much and then things start to kind of pop up or resurface over time. And it's not a bad thing, but it's just an opportunity to become aware of like, ooh, this is
Yes.
kind of a difficult time that I'm going through, or I'm noticing this thing and I don't like it. And then the other thing that you shared was like, oh, that's something that we do is the concept of, gosh, what is it that you were sharing? What was coming to mind for me is that sometimes when I notice thoughts that come up that I want to that want to be present, of like, oh, I'm not enough, or you don't think this about me, or whatever,
Right.
I'll sometimes bring them up as like a joke of like kind of acknowledging that part of me that wants to come up of like, I'm not enough, or
Right.
I'm not lovable or worthy or whatever, and naming it instead of letting that thought of I'm not enough completely like rule the situation.
Yeah.
And just having the acknowledgement. So it's like learning different ways to work with these parts of you that maybe are not as emotionally mature.
Totally. I love everything that you just said, seriously. Because yes, like when I was actually taking these notes, and I had a situation maybe like last week where there's like a series on Netflix, like the Explained series, and they like there's like psychology one. I can't even, you guys, I wasn't really watching. I was passively watching. But one of them was like mindfulness explained, and like being able to like, be present explained.
Mm-hmm.
They're really informative and kind of fun. And my parents have been watching them, and so like I was like catching like tail ends when I was like coming and going from their house. And um I had this moment where I actually like was able to recognize and like really realize the growth element that has occurred in my life, right?
Yeah.
And how I have come like leaps and bounds from this place. And then I really loved what you brought in to like that same experience that you are having of when the capacity or like the season is different.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when we're like burnt out or overstimulated, or there's just a lot happening,
Mm-hmm.
we can't expect ourselves to like be on 100% all the time and like have everything like solved and figured out. And that's sort of like what was coming to mind for me when I was taking these notes and like thinking about it, of like, wow, like I have really grown a lot and I'm so proud of that growth. And then there are moments where it's like these little things do resurface, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like, I think that that's a great place, like an invitation to look at like, oh, what's happening right now? Am I overstimulated? Have I eaten? Like, what's
Right.
missing? Am I just in like a really uncomfortable growth phase? Because sometimes when we're in like change, deep, heavy change,
Mm-hmm.
it can be like that's kind of disorienting. It's like it's dysregulating in a way, because we're having to like reorient to like this new reality or this new like way of being. And that triggers like something so much deeper in ourselves of like, okay, I'm doing this big thing, and then now like this little trigger that's like ancient is coming back in.
Yeah.
And it's like all of a sudden I snapped at this person, or all of a sudden these old stories are popping up. And so just like amplifying what you said, because that is 100% a reality. The thing is, and we've said this before, we'll say it again, like growing is not linear. There's no like destination of like, and now I've learned this and it's over.
Yeah.
It's going to come up again, right? In different ways. Maybe it's little ways, maybe it's big ways, but it's just recognizing that little moment, and being able to like work with that. So absolutely. The thing about like emotional maturity is it's a process. And I don't think I mean, most humans, I would argue, are it's a spectrum, and it's like it ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
Then there are the exceptions of people who are like really struggling to work through these things because, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but like because they don't necessarily have the tools or aren't seeking the support that they need to like get past this phase of growth.
Yeah. And I think that's such a good point of like when you are in seasons of maybe having less capacity, or it's like I'm being challenged in a new way in this season, or new triggers are coming up for me that I didn't even know existed. It's okay. And also, it's an opportunity to maybe seek some support, find like a good friend or mentor, or therapist or coach or whatever to like help walk with you through that.
Yes.
Once you've acknowledged like, oh, this is, something challenging for me right now. And it's something that I don't really want to have like become a pattern in my life. I want to really work through this and get curious about why this is happening again.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's a great place to kind of touch on how this is actually similar to narcissism but different. And the reason I think that this is like a great place to touch on that is because it's about like the consistency of the behavior, right? So I think that we're in this like modern time of like all these definitions, all these social media posts about like like these hot button words, if you will, of
everyone's a narcissist, everyone's a gaslighter,
literally like everyone is quite like we're pathologizing like these
everything.
things. Yeah. And so like, yeah, there's obviously overlap in a lot of character or like behavioral things. There's overlap in like so much, right? In the world. But this is not narcissism. Narcissism is different because it's about like the consistency and the frequency of the behavior, and also it's not localized to certain relationships, as to where like emotional immaturity can be localized to your romantic relationship or your familial relationships, but like you handle work fine, or you handle your like friends and social relationships fine. As to where narcissism, it's in everything. And also narcissism kind of has these elements of like grandiosity, a need for significance, like almost like an obsession with like power and success and
appearance.
Yes,
beauty.
appearance, like how you're perceived. So there's like some definite key differences. And also like narcissistic personality disorder is something that like is pathological, and usually, like that diagnosis comes from like a therapist or a psychologist saying like, hey, this is what's happening. And the thing about emotional immaturity is like, actually there's a ton of room for growth, and it's super possible to work with this, as to where like, and this is not my own belief, but like textbook wise, like narcissism is a little bit harder to actually like integrate and work with. Just like in a therapy, like from a therapy standpoint, like the discourse around it is that like if someone is a true narcissist, that's probably
pervasive.
That's probably like the way it is for like the rest of their existence. As to where like this, you can get tools to work on this, and you can like, I mean, I'm going to say this again, and I'm going to say it now, but like just go to therapy. Just go to therapy. It's like super simple. Yeah. But yeah, so
should we dive into how to handle emotionally immature people? If you're listening and you're like, oh yeah, I can name a few.
Yes.
What do we do?
What do we do?
Some pointers.
Yeah.
Number one, set firm boundaries. And I think that's such a good one to start with. So defining what behavior you're willing to tolerate and actually sticking to it and upholding those boundaries. And what those boundaries are doing is actually creating safety within it's creating safety for you. And actually it's creating safety for the other person too. It's creating almost like these guidelines of like, this is how you can be in relationship with me.
Yeah.
And sticking to that, upholding your boundaries, being firm in whatever the boundary is that you're setting, and like what you are or are not willing to tolerate from this person. And so some of that stuff might be like, I'm not willing to listen to you to like tear me down anymore, or I'm not willing to let you yell at me anymore. I'm not going to hear it. I'm not going to, sit around and experience that anymore. Or whatever the behavior is on the other end that you're just like, this isn't okay anymore. I'm not willing to do this anymore.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like one that I see a lot, like have seen a lot, or like have heard, just made contact with a lot of people in my time and my work and everything with emotionally immature parents or like relationships is, really just like picking and choosing like how vulnerable you are with these people. And that is actually a boundary, right? Because it's like going into the hardware store for bread. We've talked about this before,
Yeah.
but if you are having a conversation with somebody who lacks the capacity to like, actually
Yeah.
have the conversation or not project or criticize or whatever the thing is, that we see emotionally immature people do, um, that's like a boundary you have to have with yourself, is like, actually, this isn't a conversation that's safe to have. I love this person. I want to
Yeah.
have a relationship with this person. And I know I can't actually talk about this.
No, that's such a good point because it's like setting the boundary, but you don't have to verbalize the boundary. That's like just a personal internal boundary that you've set of like,
Yeah.
I'm going to protect my own emotional safety and well being by not sharing or just by choosing to not engage with this person in these certain ways because I know something's going to be weaponized or I'm going to be made fun of or rejected or mocked or whatever the thing is,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, I think that's a really good point where sometimes the boundaries are spoken and shared with the other person and very structured and rigid and whatever, but sometimes they're very personal and quiet and for you.
Mm-hmm.
And upholding those, I think, is important in both scenarios.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah. Boundaries are like, most of the time boundaries are for us as the individual, not for the other
Mm-hmm.
person to hear about. They're just for us to carry. So, another like thing for another tool for handling emotionally immature people is just not taking things personally, like in this sense that you understanding that their reactions, defensiveness, tantrums, etc., are about their limited emotional capacity, not us as the individual. And that's not to like say that like because of that we should enable the behavior or we should like tolerate certain things, but this is to say that like when we're able to actually like have empathy and compassion for the other person, of like, they simply don't have this skill and like their capacity is not there for this, that actually creates a little bit more ease and less, like, I think, friction in the relationship of trying to either like understand where they're coming from or like change how they show up. This just
Yeah.
allows like a little bit more ease in how we're engaging with each other.
Yeah, I think it can take away some of the like shame spirals that can happen
Oh
if you're
yeah.
taking everything personally. You're going to start thinking like I'm bad, I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, I deserve to be treated like this, like all those things because you're thinking that it's about you,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not about you, it's about them. Like it's a
Yeah.
reflection of what's going on in their own internal emotional landscape and they've got stuff to work through. You don't necessarily have stuff to work through, at least in that realm, you know.
Yes, absolutely. I love that.
That's a good one. The next one is being direct and calm. So communicating your needs simply and directly, avoiding emotional arguments. And I think it's really important to be direct and to stay calm. I've heard this saying a couple times of, I think it's being clear is kind. Like being very clear is to be kind to another person instead of being ambiguous and vague and like wishy washy on what you're saying, but just like be direct, be clear, but do it with kindness and do it from a place that is regulated instead of engaging in the thing that they're engaging in, of like getting, really animated and escalating and activated, and, giving into the emotional immature spiral.
The cycle. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. This is like such a huge one. I feel like for if you're someone who's dealing with emotionally immature people, like this is like part of the work, is to like, yeah, don't take the bait. Don't take the bait.
Yeah.
Cause like honestly, emotionally immature people want the reaction, and not because it's not conscious, but they want the reaction because this is part of the cycle. It's like this ties into codependency a little bit, but like they really do go together in the sense that like the bait is like if you engage in the reaction, then there's the rupture and then the repair, and that's like part of the cycle of
Yeah.
sometimes I feel like arguments or confrontation or like blowouts are like our mind confuses them for like intimacy because it feels vulnerable and it creates like an emotional reaction and response. And then after the big rupture, then the repair of like, and most often it's the person who's got emotional intelligence going and doing repair.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is the emotionally immature person, but not from a place of actual like sincere, I'm sorry that wasn't appropriate and I shouldn't have behaved that way, but from a place of like, I am sorry. Now validate me because I feel really shitty about myself and I need you to validate me because, and that's like part of the cycle. So, you know, I think like you said, being really clear and calm, like just being able to be like, hey, I'm not having this conversation with you. And if someone doesn't respect your boundaries, walk away, like remove yourself from that situation because I'm like, this is different for everybody, I'm sure. But like in my own experience, if I am going to state my boundary and then be like, hey, I'm not having this conversation with you. I'm not interested in engaging in this way. And then that's ignored and that's ignored. And I stay in that space and it's continually ignored. Then it's like, okay, only so long before it's like, all right, now I am engaging in the way that I don't want to engage. And that's where it's like, I'm going to go for a walk. If we can revisit this conversation when we're both a little bit more calm, awesome. If not, then I think like it's best we don't talk about this. So,
Two things were coming to mind when you mentioned rupture and repair. Which I don't know if we've done an episode on rupture and repair, but that might be a good one to do at some point to really dive into like it's a great skill to be able to like navigate conflict and repair. But in this context of like almost like the abuse cycle is coming to mind of like we have the buildup of things getting tense and friction happening, then the actual abuse happening, and then the honeymoon phase, and then wash, rinse, repeat. And so that's an interesting cycle within the emotional immaturity realm. And then the other thing that I was thinking about as you were saying that is people who experience emotional immaturity and have these like big outbursts, and then they know on the other side of that is the repair of we're going to come together and we're going to reconnect and we're going to make apologies and make amends and all these things. I wonder if sometimes that people who are engaging in that cycle don't know how else to receive like true connection and true intimacy without that as the precursor. And that I think goes back to the beginning of like trauma history, upbringing. Maybe that's what they experienced as like, I don't really experience love unless there was like a big blow up that happened. And then I get a hug from mom or dad and I love you or a whatever. And so those same cycles carry into adult relationships where it's like, I don't know how to initiate sex or initiate a hug or to say like, I'm so sorry or I love you and you're so worthy of XYZ. Like, I don't know how to do those things without having a big blow up first.
Yeah.
So
I think that's it, right? Like, it's so related to the trauma, but also like, I honestly think that these behaviors are a little bit like part of abuse cycles, because if we think about emotionally immature parents, I want to be like so clear. I don't think that this is intentional. I think it's unconscious because it is related to these traumas, right? Or we think about like codependency cycles. It's abuse cycles. Like they are abuse cycles. And it's different than like, it is different than like how we look at abuse, because I think we look at abuse as an intentional act a lot of the time, or like when someone's like being really
or just physical,
right? Like cruel or like physically abusive. It's almost like, it's like maybe a little bit more cut and dry to like comprehend, as to where this is like a little bit more like, well, wait, this is like a little gray area-y and like kind of it's nuanced, right? And so it's harder to like kind of look at it and be like, well, that is abuse, but it is. And that's why like we see codependent people and narcissists like tale as old as time doing this dance like for forever of like, oh, a codependent person is now in a romantic relationship with a narcissist, or there's a codependent narcissistic element in a family or whatever, because it is like this cycle of like like rupture, repair, and confusing that whole thing for emotional intimacy, which kind of reminds me of one of the things that like uh we have in our notes about like what emotional immaturity is being, or like what is a behavior that like relates to this. Not to like go back a little bit, but that's what I'm doing. Sometimes what happens in these relationships is like the emotionally immature person will engage in like kind of like shit talking another family member or a person, or they like often engage in like sort of tearing someone else down, because our brains confuse that for emotional intimacy. And so it's like the same kind of thing. It just came to mind because it's sort of the same experience of like confusing like these like repair moments or these like big fights as intimacy, or these like things that are not actually like emotional intimacy. Because in my mind, like emotional intimacy is like being able to be vulnerable or have hard conversations that don't turn into these like big things, right? And so when we're confusing them, that's where like it gets a little sticky and confusing. And
it really does.
Yeah.
Another way to handle emotionally immature people would be shifting from reacting to observing. So acting as, I love this note, acting as a thermostat, so setting the calm tone rather than a thermometer reflecting on their high temperature. And so again, it's not like taking that bait and not mirroring their own behavior, but instead almost like embodying what you are hoping to get in return, and you might not get in return, but maintaining your own integrity on how you're showing up rather than just giving into their stuff.
Yes. Like that is such a thing. I feel like children often mirror what their parents give. Like that's how we learn how to communicate and stuff. And we've kind of talked about that in other like nervous system episodes. But when you're being met with like intensity, and as a child, you would meet that back with intensity or like an equal reaction. But as an adult, the best thing you can do is just like try to like stay down on the ground and be the observer rather than the, the engage in that way. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then the last thing, for handling emotionally immature people is limiting exposure if necessary. We're like so aware that the human experience is nuanced and that it's not always so black and white and cut and dry. And this is a thing that like on my own journey I've experienced a lot, because there are people who are like, you know what, I can't have a relationship with my family member, or I need to limit my relationship with this person right now because I'm healing and I'm trying to work through some of what's gone on. And it has nothing to do with them, and it has to do with self-preservation. And so totally acknowledging that that is a very real space, and that sometimes you have to, reduce the time spent with these emotionally like more volatile situations. And also maybe that's not your reality, and maybe that doesn't feel true for you, and you want to maintain and continue to have a relationship close with whoever this person is in your life. Or if maybe you're this person and you're like, hey, I don't want to lose the people that I love. So that's where it's like being aware of, what conversations you can and can't have, and trying to just, I think that's where the boundaries come back in of like, I want to spend time with this person, and I know that like this is what we're able to engage with and talk about and whatever right now in this season of life. And so
no, I think that's totally fair, and it's nice to know like it is an option to not engage in a relationship, and that person is actually opting out of a relationship with you. Like they're making the choice to not change, and you're just upholding your boundary. And like you mentioned, you could set other boundaries of like, I'm not gonna hang out with this person alone. I'll do like family gatherings or get-togethers or whatever, and that's fine. But it just doesn't feel right or safe emotionally to just like be with this person alone. Because I know how it's gone over and over and over. So there's different different ways of like setting those boundaries or setting those exposure limitations. But just, I think it's nice to know like that's always an option.
Yes, it is. And also like remembering that it doesn't have to be permanent, I think is coming to mind right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be like a season, you know, it can be like,
Yeah.
you know what, right now I'm just needing to heal from this a little bit, or I need to give myself some space to process.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like a really common thing is like resentment can build in these relationships when you're the
Yeah.
the emotionally intelligent person, because you're doing a lot of the labor for everybody else. And so then like when you're around them, you're like irritated because you're like, well, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah.
and so give yourself space to process and, you know, remember that like this is the solution right now. And the solution might look different down the road, or this
Yeah.
isn't permanent. And I think remembering that, but I do love what you said about how like they're opting out of a relationship with you too. Ooh, good stuff.
Yeah.
Cause like, yeah, if they're not willing to like do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That enough said
And
from them.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
like, um, okay, developing your own emotional maturity. So if you're listening and you're like, oh, but I'm emotionally mature, this part's for you. So
Yeah.
increasing self-awareness is first. And, you know, we've talked about this a few times. We've talked about this in so many episodes, but we've talked about it a lot today already. But identifying situations that trigger your insecurity, your anger, your defensiveness, and learning to pause before reacting. And everything starts with awareness. Like if
Yes.
you lack awareness, you can't take any of the next steps at all. And so becoming aware of, and sometimes that's your own awareness of like, oh, kind of like the example I shared earlier of my own defensiveness with feedback. Just noticing like, ooh, okay, yeah, I'm like, this is like really touchy for me right now.
Mhm.
And it's usually not. Sometimes that's from your own experience, but sometimes it's someone else being like, hey, I'm noticing this pattern. And so someone else bringing that to your awareness. But everything starts with awareness, and then you can move
Yes.
forward.
Yes, absolutely. And maybe you don't know what to do or how to do it, but that's okay because there's like resources and tools, and that's where, you know, that's where those next steps come in. But just beginning to like reflect, I think self-reflection,
Yeah.
that's what it is. Like, right? Like people who can self-reflect, that's a fucking skill. I'm going to say
Yeah.
it. Like there are so many people I know who like, or just like we've encountered in the world, like we see online or whatever, where it's like there is not an ounce of self-awareness in this being.
It's like that setting is like turned off.
No,
we gotta
for sure.
toggle that shit on.
And I'm like, wow, what a fucking
Yeah.
way to live. Like it must be nice, honestly, because there's zero accountability, you know, to a degree, but also like the tornado of destruction that like just goes through everything that you touch. Like
pros and cons, you know.
yeah. Oh my God, we used to love a pros and cons list.
Yes.
We would make a fucking pros and cons list about everything in high school. I just remember that. Do you remember that?
No.
What?
I know. I lack a lot. I have a lot of gaps in my memory.
That is so crazy.
But I believe it. Maybe for
we
like
did.
What, boys?
Boys and like decisions, like
okay.
Yeah, I just feel like we were making like,
I mean, it's a great skill.
No, literally we would be like in the middle of class and just be like, hold on, like what are we gonna do this weekend? We need a pros and cons list, this shit. And we would like pros and cons list.
That's so
You know
funny.
what's crazy? We're like on a minor tangent right now. We have more to say about the episode, but I feel like I remember everything. Like I remember so much.
Yeah.
And I have smoked so much weed that I should be the one that doesn't remember anything.
It's crazy.
And I remember everything, you guys.
It does not make sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense. It does not make sense. I
think some people just have a really good, like they just remember, like my grandpa remembers crazy amounts of detail, and like these little stories that seem like they would have been so insignificant that when it like get baked into your core memory, like long-term memory, and he remembers them, and I'm like, I don't remember things like that.
I relate to your grandpa.
It's fun. Yeah, it's fun to hear those stories because I'm like, oh, really? We did that? Or
well, thank God. I'll be here to just, I remember everything. I think it's because I'm taking in so much at a time, and I'm just actually like on the spectrum, but that's fine. Anyway, so the next one is wait, did we do take responsibility for
No, not yet.
Okay, so the next one's going to be taking responsibility. Own your actions, own the mistakes, and own your emotions rather than blaming others or playing the victim. This is such a big one because it's like just taking, even if you don't know how to show up, what the solution is. Like, this goes back to what we were just talking about on the increased self-awareness. Maybe you don't have the tools yet to like actually change, but just saying like, hey, I'm aware right now that the way I'm behaving isn't okay. I don't know how to show up differently in this moment. I actually don't have the tools. And I'm sorry for that. But just having like literally being able to take ownership is such a big one. Or when someone comes to you and says, hey, this really affected me, it's that thing of being able to say, like, okay, I I own that, and I own that behavior, or I recognize that having outbursts isn't okay, or whatever the thing is, right? Like, I recognize that this isn't helpful or appropriate. I don't know what to do about it yet, but because at least that's like beginning the dialogue and beginning the
Yeah,
acknowledgement. And that's the
for sure.
first step.
That's a very vulnerable thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
but it's worth it. Like the potential outcome or upside to all of this is like so much better than just like not saying anything, not owning up to your own behaviors or faults or whatever. It's so important to be able to do that, and that's true intimacy too, of being able to actually like share with the other person, like, hey, I'm noticing that this is a challenge of mine right now, and I'm so sorry, and I want to actually like work through this, and knowing you're going to stumble through it, and that's
Yes.
okay. And
Yeah.
like we've already talked about, like you can think, oh, okay, this thing is resolved, and then it comes back to the surface at some point. And so all of that's okay. But I think just having that awareness and taking that responsibility is like so important.
Yeah, I love that.
Journaling your feelings, so writing down daily emotional experiences to identify patterns. I think that's such a great practice to engage in, to just kind of notice the different patterns that you're engaging in. Something that I used to assign to clients that I always thought was so fun for them to do and to also see their own like reflection is like almost journaling, but through like a table of this is the like the prompting event. This is the thing that happened. Like I was told no, I was rejected. And here was my first thought, or the first thing that I said, or the way that I reacted. And here's like the intensity of the emotion on a scale of 1 to 10. And here's the coping skill that I applied, or I blew this one up, and here's what I could have done differently instead. And starting to kind of track those things of like, is there a
Yes.
theme here? Are there certain people that you have a hard time dealing with? Is it, certain experiences like rejection you don't handle well, but you're able to like be flexible with plans, and you're able to take criticism and all of those things, but rejection is so hard for you. So yeah, I love the idea of actually getting it down on paper and to start noticing like what trends are here.
Yeah, it's like taking inventory, right? Like
Yeah.
going through and
Yeah.
just taking an emotional inventory and kind of seeing like what's happening for you. That what you just described reminds me of the like thought model, the
Yeah.
CTFAR. Like, I feel like maybe we should do like an episode on that or something, just to give like our listeners some tools, or
Yeah.
just like explain it better. But yeah, it is that thing of like, what was the circumstance? And
Yeah.
then from that circumstance, what was I thinking, and how did I feel, and what
Yeah.
action did I take, and then what was the result? And then going back and being like, okay, so because we can't control circumstances, like we really can't control other people, we can't control what goes on in the world. All we have control of is ourselves and how we show up. And so that's like a big part of this work, is like just the ownership piece of like, okay, I can't control all of these things, but I can control how I'm going to react. And so how do I want to feel when these things happen, or what do I want to think or know to be true about myself or the situation? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to advocate for journaling until I die. I love to journal. Sometimes my journal entries are as simple as like, I feel like I did nothing today. I don't know what's going on. The universe is a mystery. And sometimes I write a small novel of
Yeah.
just like, this was the experience. And so I think like just getting thoughts out of our heads helps with this too, because it's like regulation, you know?
Yeah.
It's
No,
like a
it's
little
so
thought
good.
dump. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um the next one's practicing empathy. Yeah, it's such an important, empathy is like, I think one of the most underrated skills, because it's like innate, but we lose it along the way sometimes because of trauma and life experience. I think humans are innately empathetic and have empathy and compassion innately as part of them, but not everybody has that belief, I don't think. And it's not like super, we don't nurture it enough in our like in society and in our culture, but just actively considering other people's perspectives before taking action or before reacting to something. If someone comes to you with something or they're sharing like, hey, this is how this made me feel, instead of just like automatically denying their experience, take a minute and just reflect like, is this, maybe this is true for them. And I can see actually, maybe you can't see, or maybe you can see like where they're coming from or how they feel. But just having empathy and compassion and being able to like, my favorite thing is like, I've kind of landed on this thing in my adult life in like the last couple of years, I would say, is like, nobody's right and nobody's wrong. We all just are having our own experiences. So like when a situation occurs or there's like a disagreement or like there's confrontation, it's like, well, what if we're both just right and we're both like, what if it just is? Like, what if everybody's perspective is valid?
Yeah.
And that's actually true. What if there's no like box of right and wrong, or like I am right and this person wronged me? What if where they're coming from is absolutely valid and where I'm coming from is absolutely valid? We're just like not seeing one another in that way. And I think that that's really changed like how I show up in everything, just because it's like, it takes a lot of like defensiveness and judgment out of things, because it's like, we're all just people.
For sure.
Yeah.
And just being more open to practicing empathy and seeing other people's perspective and experience, and just knowing like that's their experience. Like, who am I to tell them that they're wrong?
Right.
Yeah, no, I think that's so important. Empathy is underrated, and I think we can all use some more empathy. Yeah. The last one is go to therapy.
Literally, you guys go to therapy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
anything more on that one?
No, I mean, like, really, it's just cut and dry, go to therapy. We talked about this. We were kind of talking about this before we started recording this, but like, I feel like we'll definitely do an episode in the future about like how to go to therapy, like how to find a therapist, and like, important factors and like finding the therapist to walk this path with you. But I'm a huge proponent of therapy. I think it's like, I'm going to advocate for therapy till the cows come home, because it's such an important thing, and it gives us the tools we need to like get through, to heal and to get through and to process. And
for sure,
I think we all need that.
No, I think so too. Maybe that'll be a good next episode, or the next couple episodes we can kind of figure out where to work out in, because I think it's something we recommend a lot. And I just interacting with people who've never been to therapy, and the questions that they have, and the level of like unfamiliarity and uncertainty, and like it's nerve-wracking, and there's a lot of anxiety around it. Totally understand that. And so I think a whole episode just kind of diving into what that even entails could be helpful for people.
Yes, therapy 101.
Yes.
Love that.
Well, this was a great episode. I'm very excited about this episode, and I feel like there were a couple times throughout this where I'm like, it's so cool what we're doing here, and I feel like we're offering like such valuable information to people who are listening, and it's so fun to be able to do this and on this platform, to have this platform.
Yes, I love it. I love this. This is like, I just like have been reflecting a lot, because we're almost at a year of like doing this, which is kind of crazy. And I'm just so proud of us and proud of like our growth as people, as a podcast, and also just how we're really like putting stuff out in a world full of like crazy content and like so much stuff. I feel like we're actually like putting out honest, just like genuine,
grounded content.
One of our regulars who listens to the show says that this is one of my most favorite like she doesn't listen to podcasts, but she listens to us because she's like, it's genuinely two real humans having conversations about like real stuff and real life stuff, but like not from these like, not necessarily from the lens of like trying to be so like, it's not like necessarily always from the textbook perspective, even though we have that here. We also have like the very human, like just you and me sitting down in your living room having this conversation. So
it's very casual I think it's so good. It's been so fun to do. Last note before we wrap up, because I don't know if it's going to show up on the audio, but in case anyone watches us religiously and you're like, where's Burke? The last 2 episodes have tried a big kennel situation, and it's actually working out pretty well. But he's getting a little antsy, and so I don't know if that'll show up on the audio, but yeah, it's worked out well for us because this is so much easier to focus. Oh my gosh.
I know this is like the first, this year has been a little more challenging for Burke. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Yeah. And we're definitely at his time limit. So we're going to wrap it up. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. And be sure to just subscribe, tell us anything you want to tell us. If this resonates with you, if anything this episode has resonated with you, let us know in the comments. And we'll see you next week.